Alright, let's talk about goals. So I set some goals for myself at the beginning of this year and I kind of failed at most of them. I think going into this year I had some pretty unrealistic expectations about what my year was going to look like, and also I just was really specific with some things, and I found as I went through the year that I just didn't really care about those things anymore. So I'm keeping that in mind as I set goals for next year, but this video is to talk about how I did this year, to talk about how I did with my goals, as well as sort of some of the things I found out with keeping a few statistics for my own use about the books that I read this year, to sort of guide me in creating some goals for next year that help me expand my horizons. So my first goal was to read 52 books this year, and I did complete that. I actually read 57 as of taping this video. I may finish one more before the year is out, but I did surpass the goal, and I was really excited about that because 52 books really felt like a tall order for me. I don't know why I give the cat jangly toys. The next goal was to get my TBR, or my books on my shelf that I have not read, down to 50 or 30 books. I didn't even come close to that. The last time I looked, I'm pretty sure that my books were at like 64, which was about where I started, even though I read 50-something books this year. So I was buying books and then reading the books I bought instead of reading the ones on my shelves, or I would just buy a bunch of books and then not get to them anytime soon. So I didn't do very well with that, but I also sort of realized about halfway through the year that I didn't care, because honestly, to me, unread books on my shelf is not a stressful thing. It doesn't make me feel bad about myself. It doesn't make me feel like I'm buying too much. It just means that I have something to look forward to that I don't have to go find. I can just pull it off my shelf and read it. And so I'm not so concerned with cutting my TBR down anymore. I do want to scale back my spending and start utilizing my library more, just because honestly I don't need a bunch more books, and also it just, I think supporting the local library is a really great thing to do, and it's also financially responsible for me at this point in my life. The next two are the ones that I felt were too specific, and I just sort of threw out the window because I was not really in the mood for either of them. The first one was to read a Jane Austen book, because I have only read, I think, half of her novels, so I wanted to start reading the rest of them so I could complete them, but I just was never in the mood for a Jane Austen book. And the second one was to read another book in the Song of Ice and Fire series. So I've read the first one, but that's as far as I got. I didn't even so much as consider picking one up, so that was definitely a fail. I'm not sort of writing that series off yet. I do have it in mind in part of one of my goals for next year, but I wasn't in the mood for either of those types of books, and I just didn't care. So I kept some statistics for myself this year. I'm not going to go into super specifics because I don't know that you guys care that much about it, but basically I kept track of how many books I read a month, and you know, how many pages, what years they were from or published, and different things like that, just so that I could get a picture of sort of my reading for the year. And I was happy to see that I read at least 3 books a month, which for me was pretty great. I was happy with the page counts. I felt like there was a good spread mixture of those. But one of the things that I was not particularly happy to see was that I read mostly books from 2000 onward. So I read a lot of new releases, which, you know, I got some of those from publishers. I was really excited about things coming out, and I feel like being on BookTube and seeing newer books, that's sort of something that can happen, and that didn't bother me so much. But then I felt like I saw that the bulk of my reading were books that were published from 2014 to 2000, and for me, I feel like there are so many books before the 2000s that are so good that I'm missing out on, and I think only 7 of the books I read were published before the year 2000. So that's something that I want to work on going forward, and I'll talk about it a little more in my goals. But if you guys have books that you've read that are, you know, in that time period, then definitely let me know some things that you've read that you really enjoyed, because I was shocked that it was that few books. So I definitely want to work on that next year. But overall, I had a pretty good reading year. I think most of my books were 3 to 5 star ratings. I had very few that were 2 star and none that I put a 1 star. And I don't know that I DNF'd any books this year, but I was pleased with my reading, and I liked tracking some things to just sort of get an idea and to see things a little clearer at the end of the year instead of just looking back and being like, what did I read? But yeah, so even though I didn't really meet the goals that I set out to do at the beginning of the year, I feel like I overall had a really satisfying and like horizon broadening year. So I hope to continue that trend into 2016, and I hope that you will check out my goals when that video goes up, and I hope you guys are having a wonderful day. I will see you next time. Bye!